So today is great because we are going to be exploring 5 different ecosystems that are found on Earth: tundra, aquatic, desert, grasslands, and forest. We actually have 2 different examples of forest, a rainforest and a deciduous forest, because when you go through and explore, you are going to be doing an activity with those 2 different forests. So this recording is actually just going to be a quick overview of the areas. There are activities at each area that you will be performing when you go through on your own, but I'm going to go through it with you first so we can have a brief overview and you can kind of understand a little bit about each ecosystem. So we're going to start with the tundra. And as you can see, it's pointing, and we are going to be going to the northern part of the globe. If we zoom out a little bit, we'll be able to see to get a good look of about where we are. So we're zooming out. And if we look, we are at the very top end of the globe. Tundras are usually at the top and the bottom of the globe because a tundra is a place where it is very, very cold. If we look at our picture again, we can see that there is not a lot of different vegetation. And vegetation is just a fancy word for plant life. And so it is mostly just very small grasses. And this is because the growing season, or the time when plants can grow, is only about 60 days, or between 2 and 3 months. Other than that, it's just too cold for anything to grow. And the plants here also have another challenge to work with. We're going to look. It's called permafrost. And so permafrost is something that happens because it is so cold up in the tundras that the ice below the surface doesn't ever really melt. So we can look, and it's probably the middle of summer right here, and the ice on top has melted, but only for maybe a foot or 2. Underneath that, it is just pure ice and nothing can grow. And so anything that does grow has to use this small amount of soil to grow. And so nothing larger than these grasses, like no trees, would be able to grow here. And our next area that we're going to be going to is an aquatic ecosystem, which takes us pretty much to the opposite side of the globe. The aquatic ecosystem that we are going to be looking at is actually located near Australia. It's called the Great Barrier Reef. So again, if we zoom out just a little bit, we'll be able to see, and we have Australia right here. And the Great Barrier Reef is interesting because it is actually the only living thing that you are able to see from space. So when the astronauts are out in space, kind of like we are, you are still able to see it, and it actually is a coral reef. So it is a living thing, and it has its own ecosystem. So if we go and we look, we are actually going to be spending some time, and we're going to measure how large this ecosystem is. So if we go up to our measuring tool, and I like to use the path, so if you click on the path tab, and miles, I think that's good. We all kind of understand what miles are. So we're going to start down here, and we have kind of this little part of the coral reef here that's broken off from the main piece. So that's where we're going to start our beginning, because that is our southernmost tip. So we use our path tool, and we are able to create a path, and you can actually click multiple times and it'll make a path for you. So we can kind of follow the line of our coral reef here and look at about how long or how big this coral reef is. And as you can see, it's well over 800 miles long. It is a very, very large ecosystem that we have going on here. So we're going to clear that and actually exit out and zoom back in again. So as we are looking, I want you to look through our different barrier reefs and make sure over here when you explore that you have your explore the ocean checked and your archive endangered animals checked, so you will be able to see, because that brings up these little dots, and these little dots are great because they have different multimedia clips. So if we look at the one that the place marker is on, we can watch a small video about the coral ecosystem. So I want you, when it pulls up, to watch the movie about this ecosystem and tell me one new thing that you learned. That's great. The next thing that you're going to be doing is you're going to be looking at some of our different dots and pictures, and I want you to learn one thing and tell me one thing about an animal that you find. That is excellent. We're actually going to be moving on to our desert ecosystem. So as we move on, a lot of people think of deserts as kind of this barren wasteland where all there is sand. But as we can see from our picture and as we're going to discover, the desert is actually very, very plentiful with life. The only difference is that plants and animals in the desert have to make adaptations, or that's just a fancy word for changes to their behavior and to their needs to be able to survive in the desert. So if it's going to let us, we're actually going to enter in, and this is a cool feature because it's a 360-degree picture. So it's a picture, but we can kind of maneuver through it. So I want you guys to go and to look and count how many different types of plants that you can find as you look through this picture. I think that's great. You know, as I was looking, I saw several different. We have kind of this yellow flower and a white flower and a kind of a purpley flower and some green bushes and these long stick bush things, and of course the cactus. And so the desert is actually full of life. It just is different from other ecosystems that we have. So we're actually going to explore one of those different ecosystems. It's called a grassland. And as we are arriving at the grassland, I want you to look at this picture and tell me which plant seems to be most common. Of course, it's grass. You don't really see trees. There's kind of one right here and there's one off in the distance, but most of it is grass, and that's why it's called a grassland, is because it is made up of almost exclusively grass. But it is also made up of lots of different animals. So we're going to look at some of these animals. So, here's another picture of the grasslands. We can see the trees, but it's mostly just grass. And we're going to look at some of our animals that we have. We have a leopard, and there's African buffalo, lions, some zebra. This is actually in the Serengeti National Forest. And the grassland is a thriving ecosystem because there are so many different types of animals. We have the animals that eat on the grass, and then our carnivores, or our meat eaters, that eat the animals that live on the grass. And it makes the grasslands one of our most diverse ecosystems. So from the grasslands, we're actually going to go to the rainforest, which is another very diverse rainforest, and it's almost the opposite of the desert. Where the desert receives very little rainwater, the rainforest, as you can tell from the name, receives a whole lot. And our rainforests are mostly located near the equator, as you can see from this picture. And the problem with our rainforests are that we are losing them very, very quickly. They're a very beautiful, very lush ecosystem, but because of different deforestation or people coming and cutting down the trees, we're losing almost a football field worth of rainforest a second. So if we click on our image overlay, every second we are losing that much rainforest. And so compared to the whole, if we zoom out and we can look, that doesn't seem like a lot. It seems like there is a whole lot of rainforest that we have. All of this area in here is rainforest. But if we think about it, in the time that you've been watching this tutorial, over 600 of these football-sized areas have been taken out from our rainforest. They no longer exist. And so if we keep going at that pace, pretty soon all this rainforest that we have is no longer going to be there. And we're not going to have that. And rainforests are super important to the earth because they supply almost 60% of the oxygen in the world. And so the air that you're breathing right now most likely came from a rainforest. And so our last stop is actually called a deciduous forest, which is different, and it's probably the one that you're more familiar with because it has the trees, but unlike the rainforest, these trees in the autumn, they change colors and fall down, and that is actually why it's called a deciduous. Deciduous means to fall off in Latin. And so these trees lose their leaves in the fall and winter and then grow them back in the spring and summer. And so in the end, for this activity here, you are going to be doing a little bit of research about deciduous and rainforests, and then you're going to end up making a Venn diagram about what is similar and what is different about these two areas. So I hope you enjoyed your virtual field trip through the ecosystems of the world, and happy exploring.